You got to take time to grieve. Grief is not and everyone grieves differently. Everyone takes their own path, but you have to let yourself go through it. And it's a real hard season. I think loss sometimes isn't these big epics like someone passed, but even just a change in season. Maybe someone's listening right now and they've got a kindergartner, and it's just that launching them off to kindergarten. That's a transition. That's a loss. That's a change. They're not at home anymore. It doesn't take the pain away, but it gives purpose to the pain. And I just think that sometimes that does help. It doesn't take the pain away, and nothing takes the pain away except just getting through it and letting yourself grieve, but it will add a purpose to it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Mom's Way to Wellness. Today, I have the pleasure of sharing a conversation with Jodi Snowdon. And if you are not familiar with Jodi's work, she has a heart for moms and speaks about how her greatest heartbreak catapulted her to her greatest growth. And she shares that message for moms as well. She is an author, a speaker, and hosts the Depth podcast, which is also the name of her book, Depth: Growing Through Heartbreak to Strength. Jodi joined me for an honest conversation about how various losses she experienced in her own life changed her own journey as a mom and as a woman. This is a two-part conversation, and in part one, we talk more about how her experiences transformed her as a woman and a mom, the importance of self-awareness, and the strength acrostic she uses as a framework in her Depth book. We spent some time speaking specifically about how God uses situations and challenges to refine us. Through brokenness, grief, and loss, how He sits with us and walks with us through our journey. So let's get into part one of this conversation. Hello, Jodi. It is so good to see you. Thank you so much for
Yes.
being on the show.
Oh, it's so great to see you. And yes, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, I am very excited to talk about your Depth book. And for our audience, I just want them to know that I met you at a writer's retreat, and you were just such an authentic and genuine personality. And so I'm so happy to be able to have you on the show to share your message with moms, because I see nuggets of mental health and self-care in your messaging, and that's part of what we talk about on Mom's Way to Wellness. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, it's really fun. I met you at that Hope Writers retreat. I think that was in 22. It was right after I had launched my book. Is
Mhm.
that right?
I believe so.
And then you came and wrote on my blog. I have a Heartbreak to Strength blog where people share their stories of heartbreak and how God made them stronger. And that's kind of what happened with me. I never set out to be an author or, podcasts and any of that. It all started with heartbreak. And I went through a divorce. I had a miscarriage. My dear, dear friend passed away to cancer. And each one of these things just helped me grow deeper in my faith and also help me grow stronger in the Lord. And so that's kind of where this whole idea of the book came. I'm going to hold it up for those that are watching, but it's a tree with the deep roots. I'm going to talk a lot about that today, because what if your greatest heartbreak can catapult you to that deep rooted growth, that growth that you won't really get when life is going status quo? Because we don't always depend on God when things are not, until the rug's pulled out from on it from under us, if we're honest. But I'm a school teacher. I have two sons. I'm an empty nester now. My youngest just graduated high school last June and he's off at college. My other one graduated college. And so I'm in a really neat season to encourage moms. I love to go and speak to moms. So I have a heart for moms. It's such an important role God has given us. And God has taught me a lot along my journey. And through the heartbreaks, God has really chiseled me into be a little better version of me. Every year you grow better, right? You never arrive. But I just love to encourage others in their walk, especially if they're going through something hard.
Yeah, I love that. I love that part of your story where you talk about the presence of grief in all of your experiences.
Mm.
And you look great for having, launched some kids out of the home already and being in your empty nest
Thank
season.
you.
I
I
appreciate
love
that
that.
so much. Because it takes a lot of intention for us to take care of ourselves when we go into that season, right? And I know
Yes.
that you also recently lost your dad, and I'm so sorry for your loss. I know that you
Yes.
took some
Thank you for
time.
sharing that.
Yeah, and I know that you took some time away from your podcast to give yourself the opportunity to just be in that grief. And I think a lot of times we get uncomfortable with talking
Mm.
about grief, right? In our culture, we want to bypass. I think I've heard the term spiritually bypass the hard things in
Ooh.
life, right? And so
Yes.
I love that you speak about the tension between both, like especially in church culture, we might just want to jump over to joy and not really address the hard places. So, just if you could share your heart for how your heartbreak turned into a message.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm right back in the heartbreak again. So I wish I could tell people it's like a one and done. You have that one great heartbreak, and then life is never going to give you another heartbreak again. But that is not true. So when I wrote the book, my three great heartbreaks were my miscarriage, my divorce, and my friend passing to cancer. And that was in 2006, 2014, and 2016. Well, the book published in 22, and I'm relaunching the book because I got married, which is actually really exciting. So 10 years single, and then God brought this amazing Christian man into my life. And then just a couple years after that, sadly, I lost my dad. So there's this joy and sorrow. There's this joy of, finding this man that's a strong Christian man and the love of my life, but then also, losing now another, like, a parent is an important part of who you are. And he was my one parent that I could talk to. My other mom has dementia, so there's another layer of grief in that. It's like a slow loss of her. And so I just feel like I'm right back in the middle of like reading my book. It's kind of fun that it's relaunching at the time where I need it again. And basically, the message I want to share with someone is you got to take time to grieve. Grief is not and everyone grieves differently. Everyone takes their own path, but you have to let yourself go through it. So I took that time off. I took 4 months off from ministry because I was like, I can't pour into people right now. I got to pour into myself, and I need to sit with this. And honestly, like the first month or two was just handling his estate. My dad had a trust and everything was handled, but like just all that, you just don't realize all the little things. And I didn't even really start the grieving for probably after the service, because up until then you're just in survival mode. And I remember at the exact same time my kids were graduating. So I had a college graduation, my dad passing, a high school graduation. And I remember trying to hold both at the same time. So at the high school graduation, I'm cheering my son as he's going across the stage. I'm sidelining the grief so I can be present for my son. The next day, nothing was on the calendar. I just cried the whole day because it was like finally I could let myself feel like he should have been there. He was at my other son's graduation. Like I wish my dad was there, and just letting myself sit and feel. And so for me, that involves journaling. I'm a huge component of journaling out my feelings. Feelings have to come through us. They have to come out. For some people, that's a walk, a hike with the Lord, and verbally. I like to verbally process too, but I think for me, writing out is how I do it. But I also love, like yesterday I was at the beach, and I love to do this thing where I throw rocks to kind of release what's going on in my life. And sometimes it's stress, sometimes it's just a prayer request. And so I do that as well. There's so much you could do physically for how you're feeling emotionally, but it has to come through us. We can't keep the grief. Like you can't just say, "Oh, I'm okay," and cope. It's going to come out some way. Is that helpful?
Yes, that is so helpful because you're right. It comes out some way. Whether or not we
Yes,
acknowledge it is a whole different story. And
correct.
I think grief just becomes a lifetime companion. It's just a matter of how
Mm,
it shows up or what circumstances bring it up, right? Whether it's something that you're sharing alone in a moment
right.
as someone who had that particular relationship with that person, or a combined moment, right? Like if it's something that you and your kids share together, and we're grieving all the time. If you really think about it, like when we lose a loved one, that is a loss. And at the same
Yes.
time, we also lose people in different ways, right? So like you said,
Yeah,
and I'm sorry to hear about this other journey you're going through with your mom having dementia.
I know. It's
Um,
hard.
yeah, and it is another layer of grief, just like you said, right? To
Yeah.
see a decline and to see change, and how can we spiritually bypass that and not be impacted by that emotionally?
Yeah. I think it's a hard season when your kids get older and you start launching them because at the same time, your parents are elderly. So you're balancing this. I'm changing my mother role. I'm not the same. mother role like I was. I'm still a mom, but I don't have kids in my home now where I'm daily pouring into them. I still text them all the time and call them here and there, but it's just different. And then my daughter role has changed to be more needed, where it's the care and the attention, and it's a real hard season. I think loss sometimes isn't these big epics like someone passed, but even just a change in season. Maybe someone's listening right now and they've got a kindergartner, and it's just that launching them off to kindergarten. That's a transition, that's a loss, that's a change. They're not at home anymore, or they're going to middle school and you're like, they don't talk to me as much anymore, or there's seasons of motherhood. So I know this is a lot about moms, where there is going to be loss and transition in that season. And then there's also big losses of like losing actually the physical presence of someone because they've passed. So I like to speak to both, because no matter where you are, you have to let yourself feel that loss. You can't minimize it. People will say, "Oh, it's not a big deal." It's like if it's bringing up emotion in you and you're feeling it, then you need to let yourself grieve it. And you can't just sideline, and you'll find another coping mechanism. Some people binge watch Netflix. There's nothing wrong with TV, but if you're escaping the reality in the TV, it's going to still be there when you're done watching the show, right? You never fully escape it till you deal with it. And so I have this strength acrostic in my book, and the T is in the ST. The first T is tearfully allow yourself time to grieve and process the emotions. It's so important. And I just think the world, we just want to skip by it. Like, can't we just do something quick and get through the grief? And that's just not how grief is. You don't put a band-aid on it. It has to be felt. There's that word through it. You have to move through it. And for some people, they don't want to feel it. They don't want to feel the sadness, the anger. There's anger. There's doubts of God. I mean, if we want to bring our faith into it, then people are like, what? Why would a good God allow this? There's so many aspects. But each time we have to feel it, because we're going to eventually have it come out in negative ways if we don't. And the way that we bring those doubts and stuff to God is we lament. And that's the first part of the strength across it, that seek God and invite him into the pain. It's just a fancy word for lament. Psalms shows us how to lament. David does it beautifully. It's like a holy complaining, but it's also bringing in God into it. So you end with a but God and some truth about God, or yet. If you read them, there's always a conjunction, but yet. And each one speaks a truth about the Lord, a promise that you can cling to. Because some people are like, I don't even know where God is in the middle of this. Well, he is close to the brokenhearted. It says that in Psalms 34:18. So maybe that's what you can claim. God, in the Bible, it says this. Like, I don't really feel it yet, but I'm going to speak it. Or maybe it's the Lord is, I'm sorry, I just said that one, the close to the brokenhearted. Oh, I will never leave you nor forsake you, the Lord says. I mean, there's so much of his presence being, if you read scripture after scripture, he's promising his presence. So in the middle of the grief, the gift is God's presence. And some people say, well, that's not enough. Well, that is a beautiful thing. If you really let yourself have that time with God, he is going to show up in ways you never knew possible. And your roots are going to grow deep. So you're healing, which is what you need to do, but you're also growing. You're growing depth, which again is the title of my book. It's the name of my podcast. It's like what I'm so passionate about, that deep rooted growth. And here's the thing. The reason people don't want to do it, Ida, is because it's hidden. It's like, oh, I want everyone to see all the things I'm doing for the Lord. But no, 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 no. Right now, you need to just hunker down and get your Bible and get a Christian book that's pointing you back to the Bible, or whatever helps you. And you need to go with the depth, right? Like the Lord, it's time with the Lord. And I like to tell this story. I love to tell tree stories. So I'll tell it real quick. But there's this story about this man that goes into the forest, and he's just done with God. He's like, I don't see you in the middle of this. I'm ready to just like check out. And the Lord says, well, what do you see around you? And he sees ferns and bamboo. And so the Lord goes on to tell him that ferns, immediately there's external growth. You will see the fern immediately start to grow. But for bamboo, year one, you'll see no external growth, only roots being grown. Year two, no external growth, only roots being grown. By year five, you still do not see any external growth in bamboo, only depth, only deep rooted growth, because bamboo is going to be 100 feet tall, Ida. And for it to withstand that height that it's going to be, it doesn't start with the height, it starts with the depth. And so I want to say to someone right now, I don't know why you're going through your hard thing. That's not mine to answer. And I don't even think a why would make you feel better. I do think we want a why, but I don't think it'll always make you feel better. But what if I could tell you that your hard thing is going to help you grow deeper in the Lord? And once you have that depth, he can take you to places you couldn't have gone before. He could take you higher. Maybe there's a calling, a ministry. I never set out to be any of these things, a writer, a podcaster, but all of that was birthed from that deep rooted time with the Lord first. And so it doesn't take the pain away, but it gives purpose to the pain. And I just think that sometimes that that does help. It doesn't take the pain away, and nothing takes the pain away except just getting through it and letting yourself grieve, but it will add a purpose to it.
Right. And thank you for sharing that story because it's amazing what happens in the unseen parts of our lives, right?
Yes.
It's deep roots, and those are the things that are hidden. And it's a lot like grief. Grief is something that we carry with us, but it's hidden unless somebody knows
Yes.
that we've had a loss. They might not realize why it is that we respond to situations a certain way, or why we have a certain sensitivity to the needs of others, or why we know how to sit with people in their pain, right?
Yes.
So it carries with us, but it's not always what is seen. And you're right. Sometimes we want to rush through it or see something
Mm,
at the end, but not do the hard work
right.
of growing and growing those roots. So I love that. And I do love that strength acrostic that you use in the book.
Yes,
And so I think you wanted to share more about a certain part of that. Can you go ahead and
I
share with
do.
us?
Yeah, so I'm going to just read each of the letters, but the E is, I think, the one we're going to focus on today. So S is seek God and invite him into your pain. T is tearfully allow yourself time to grieve and process the emotions. I've already talked about both of those. And that's kind of where you start. People always say, where do I begin? This isn't linear, by the way. This is you're going to bounce around this acrostic all over, but this is what happens when you first get the doctor diagnosis or the divorce papers, or once again, the pregnancy test says negative, or something happened, you had a miscarriage, or, whatever happened, that your child the special needs, whatever's happening. And it's like, this isn't what I wanted, God. This isn't what I planned for my life. This is where you seek God and you invite him into your pain and you tearfully allow yourself time to grieve. There's support groups out there. I would say invite others into it. Community is important. Get a counselor. I was in counseling, Ida, for years to help me through these heartbreaks because sometimes you just can't do it by yourself. But there's support groups, there's grief share groups, I was in an empty arms group for my miscarriage. So you can find specific ones for your actual thing, or you can get like a general grief group. But it's nice to know you're not alone. And so community is important in grief. But the R is replace your finite view with God's infinite perspective. There'll become a point in time where you're going to need to start asking why and start saying, what now? What now? How am I going to use this to help others? And change. And there's a perspective shift, and it's not right away. And it could take years. I don't want to give anyone a timetable, but if you've been sitting in the pain for years and you're still struggling with it, maybe it's time for the perspective piece. So I give a lot in there, and I'm not going to get into that today. But the next one, the E, embrace God's character development in the midst of the chaos. This is where I want to land for a little while because I believe that God had some character development to do in me. And one of the ways that worked was through the heartbreaks, right? The chiseling. And there's a chapter, and I love the title, Embrace the Chisel. And I get real vulnerable in this chapter where I share my personal struggle of things that wasn't necessarily where I brought to the marriage that was definitely not healthy. And some of these things I didn't even realize about myself till I had gone through my divorce, was in counseling. It was like these light bulb moments are going off, and I'm realizing I need to work on myself. And one of the things is I struggled with anger. And I'm going to get into a lot in our next episode where we talk about how to help your kids through this. But anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion. Your primary emotions are hurt, fear, disappointment. So my counselor used to say, stop. As soon as you feel like you're going to erupt, stop. And what do you feel right before that? Well, I started doing that. And I realized I felt like no one was listening to me. My kids, whoever I was talking to. Well, then she said, well, let's trace that back. Was there a time in your childhood where you felt like no one was listening to you? It's like, oh, I want. So you're finding why you act the way you are in light of maybe things back in your childhood. These are called triggers. And they say if it's hysterical, it's historical. So if you're getting something worked up about something that really is not that big of a thing, then something is being triggered from your past. And no one wants to do this hard work. So let me just start by saying this, Ida. This requires counseling and digging deep, but you are going to become a better version of yourself. You're going to be better to be around. Your kids are going to learn. You're going to teach them things. It's just going to make you a better parent. It's going to make you a better spouse. If you're married, it's going to make you better in all the ways, but it does require work. And it's not fun because you're like trying to understand why you react the way you react. Some people don't explode. And with anger, they stuff and they kind of keep things down. And that's not necessarily any better. So you think, oh, I'm keeping the peace. But if you're keeping the peace at the cost of you just stuffing, it's eventually going to come out, right? You can't stuff forever for it not. So there's so much that you can do to develop who you are. It's called self-awareness. And I had none. I had no self-awareness till I got older. And it was like, I wasn't taught this as a kid. And this is where we want to encourage you in the next episode to teach these things to your kids, but you can't teach what you don't know. So you first have to learn it yourself. And this is where I want to say to you as the mom, the woman, whether you have kids or not, wife, like you have to work on you. You're responsible for you. You can't blame everyone else for all your issues. What's going on in you that you can work on? And so, I read a book called Unglued by Lisa Turkers, and I realized, oh, I'm an exploder. Like that's the first time I realized I get really angry like this. Then I read another book called How We Love, probably my most life-changing book. And it's How We Love Our Kids is the parenting one. How We Love is the marriage one. So I started with the parenting one and I right away identified with this vacillator. And I was like, what does this even mean? I started reading it and I was like, this is me, but I didn't understand why. So I had to go to my counselor and we dug deeper and trying to figure out why am I like this? And you guys, it's hard work, but oh my gosh, light bulbs are going off, connections, and it helped me learn so much about myself. Now, did overnight I change? No, but self awareness is the key to change. You can't change if you're not self aware, but self awareness is the key to change. And then change takes intentionality. So then you start, okay, next time I feel like I'm going to explode, I'm going to pause if I can and stop and identify what's going on. Can I identify instead, I've been hurt? The person just hurt me. So I just want to erupt in anger, but instead I'm going to stop and say, you know what? Your words you just said that hurt me. That's a growth step. You did not just erupt in anger. You stopped and identified. So you find little ways you can start, and it's small baby steps. You get really excited when you've done it once. You might explode 5 times, but the one time you stop, and then over time it gets better, and you just get intentional about who you need to become. And it's called embrace the chisel because God is refining you and chiseling you and making you into the woman that he wants you to be. We never arrive. Sanctification never happens this side of eternity, but we keep trying to grow ourselves. And I just think that character development is such a key part of the acrostic. And no one really wants to embrace the chisel, right, Ida?
Right. It could be really hard. It could be really hard. But you know what? It's so important because self-awareness, like you said, it's the starting point. And
It
I
is.
actually want to read a passage out of your book
Sure.
after
Please.
it's in chapter 12, I believe. I do have the digital copy of your book. That's why I can't hold up the paper copy right now.
Here, I'll
But
hold it up while you read it. This is it.
perfect, perfect. And so these are your words, and you say, I realize now that God was refining me through this healing process, even though I did not enjoy it. No one likes to be put in the refiner's fire. A silversmith uses the fire to purify precious metal, placing the silver over the flame. The intense heat burns away any impurities. To ensure that the metal is not destroyed, he intently watches it through the whole refining process. The silver is fully refined when the silversmith can see his image in it. God refines us
Mm,
the same way. Just as silver is put in the fire to remove the impurities, God uses our struggles to clear away our impurities. Just as the silver reflects the image of the silversmith when it is fully refined, we will reflect the image of God. The goal of refinement process is to make us more like Christ. And that is
mm,
beautiful. And when
thank
I
you.
was thank you, these are your words, and you're sharing this perspective. And as I read it, I also thought about how, God didn't save or prevent uh, those, in the Old Testament story, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from being in the fire. Instead, he was with them in the fire. And so
So good.
sometimes, right, sometimes we want our rescue to be take us away from this, take the pain away from us. And that's not necessarily how growth works. Growth happens
Right.
when, underneath the ground where there is no light, where the seed opens up, or it happens through a challenging situation. It's an opportunity for us to practice our faith, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, so I
I
love
love that.
this. Yes,
Yeah.
there's
And
your
I love
words.
what you
Thank
just
you.
said because God's presence is really the beautiful gift in the middle of the pain? So, again, like I grew so deep in my relationship with the Lord. I thought I had a strong relationship with Him before. I just couldn't believe how intimate it felt, the intimacy of the Lord through all of it, especially the divorce. That's what broke me the most. It's like I was this clay pot that just had broken and shattered. And the way God put me back together. That's one of my other favorite chapters in the book is the brokenness one, because we are going to have things that break us. But I used to think that was a negative thing. But now I realize who better to come along and help someone else now that's been through a divorce and someone that's walked through that path and seen God use it and heal you and help you become a better version of you and help you be a better parent to your kids. I mean, I started teaching my kids these lessons I was learning, and I was 38 when I got divorced. And they were like 6 and 10 when we first started. And it was like, God, this is amazing. I didn't learn these things when I was young like that. Like how much, if they can help, these lessons can help them in their future relationships, then that is a beautiful gift, right? It's a bless in the mess, even though I don't want to be walking through this. And it's like pruning, right? I have rose bushes and you got to prune them really far back. And sometimes God has to prune us. And no one likes that. No one wants to be in the fire. But when you come out of it, when you have allowed God to chisel you and prune you, and you have really surrendered it, right? Sometimes we can like hold us, or I'm not going to allow it. And it's like, I hate to say it, you're going to have to go through another hard thing for him to do it,
Yeah.
right? But what if we could instead allow it and then become more, like you said, more empathetic? I forget the word you used, but you said something like being able to enter into the pain with someone. Like now I can sit and talk with someone about any grief they're going through. It doesn't have to be the same as mine because I've walked through so many different griefs. I have just this way I can listen and empathize and just be present in someone's life, that gift of presence, not trying to fix them or not trying to sugarcoat something. I mean, it is hard. Grief is hard. But I was not able to do that until I'd walked through my hard things. If anything, I might have said hurtful things and I didn't even know I did. Like we just don't know what we don't know until we've walked through it. So if I went through my rest of the acrostic, that's the last letter H. I'll just do it real quick. N
Yes.
is never lose sight of God's grace. And I want to say to someone right now, if you feel shame from whatever you're walking through, that's not from God. God does not want us to stay shackled in our shame. Divorce caused me to feel shame. But you know what? I had this a moment in time where God spoke in my mind. You may have a broken heart, but you're not a broken vessel, and I can still use you. And that was so freeing to me to think, even though I walked through this, that God could still use me. So don't ever feel like that. Whatever you did can't be used. God's grace covers everything. G is give praise to God even as your heart breaks. And this one's hard because you're not praising God for the hard thing. You're praising God for his presence or the presence of a friend or the gift of a meal or the gift of an encouraging word, something that's in the middle of um the time that you're grieving, that someone enters in and helps you in a way that just makes you feel like, okay, I can get through. I could take another step. I could do this another day. The second T in strength is trust God is good when your mind is doubting and you don't understand. And again, I can't get into all of it in detail, but this one has Joseph in it. And you guys, Joseph was so unself aware when he started off his life. And then God used detours to make him to this place where he can offer forgiveness to his brothers. So I just want to say, again, it's that character development. And then H, honestly share your story and help another hurting heart. And Ida, this is where it goes full circle. We're not supposed to hold our broken pieces. We're supposed to use them to help others and in their grief.
Oh, that's beautiful. And it takes such vulnerability to be able to do that,
Yes.
right? Like we have to be
Mhm.
honest with ourselves and honest with our pain. And yet, when we're sharing that with somebody else and they actually feel seen, it just it just does something
Powerful.
powerful. Yes, that's the right word to describe it. It's so powerful. And it's an opportunity to be the hands and feet of God, right? When we look at it from a spiritual
Yes.
perspective. Um, I'm just curious of
Yeah.
how, um, I know this is a short interview, but I'm curious if you could share something that you are continuing to learn about yourself, something that you as a woman, because a lot of times we identify so much as being a mom that we don't pay
Mm.
attention to the woman that we still are, right? We hold all these different roles, all these different responsibilities, all these different needs that we need to meet for others in our lives. But what's something that you're learning about yourself through this journey?
Well, it's interesting because just September, I felt like I just had a little breakdown because every role in my life had changed. My mother role had changed. I had just driven my son up to college and I came home to an empty house. And, you prepare for that, but it's hard. It's a total challenge to be completely like kid free when that's been your role for 20 plus years, with my
Yeah.
oldest one being 4 years older. And so you're kind of like, who am I? it's like this identity crisis. Who am I? I am a mom, but I'm not an active mom right now because I mean, I encourage them through text and stuff, but there's no one in my house that I'm mothering. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then my daughter role changed. And I just thought, okay, who is Jodi? I got to go back to the basics. I am a daughter of the king. Like, you know what? No matter whatever happens in your life, if you're divorced, all of a sudden you're no longer a wife. Like, I remember being, that's a weird thing. I don't have that role anymore. When roles change, we sometimes second guess who are we. So our primary role above everything else, if we put it in the order it's supposed to, God's supposed to be first, even above your kids and your husband. It's supposed to be your primary relationship. So you are a daughter of the king primarily. Like, that's it. And so when everything else gets taken away, whether it's a husband passes, which I hope that never happens, or a divorce, and I hope that never happens either. But when these things happen and you don't have that role anymore, when your father passes, your mother passes, and you're not that daughter role anymore, when your roles are kind of stripped away, who are you? You are a daughter of the king. Always. Never, that won't be stripped away. Like, that can't be taken away. So I had to go back to that and then remember who I am. And then through that, all the other roles come out of you. Right. And so I just had to realize, it might look different, but I will always be a mom. I just don't have, someday I'll be a grandma and it'll be a different role. But like, I just think that when grief happens, we kind of get turned upside down who we are. And it happened again for me in the loss of my father, as well as launching my son, my baby, right? It was a little different when I launched my first. It was still very hard, but I had a little other one at home that still needed me, right? But it's just really different when you're like, well, no one needs me in that way anymore. It's like, well, you know what? God will still, he has a plan for you beyond what you can understand. And that's why it's so important. If you can have a way you're serving the Lord that doesn't involve mothering and doesn't involve your, other roles. Like, I have this ministry. I love to help people that are walking through hard things. I serve with my husband now. We go and serve at a homeless ministry. So I have ways that I serve the Lord and pour into other people that don't have to do with these other roles. Because those of you listening that are moms, it will be weird, but there will be a time when your house doesn't have kids in it. And your primary thing is your husband and obviously the Lord still. But, so you got to foster all of that as you're still being a mom. Is that helpful? I hope.
Yes, that is so helpful. Thank you so much for sharing that because it also shows how there's growth, right? So there's still growth when you're opening up and embracing who you truly were meant to be, right? We're not called to
Yes.
be, um, our full identity is not rooted in the things that we do. It's rooted
Correct.
in the value that God sees us through. And so sometimes we really lose sight of that. Um, and then life changes, and it's so important that these opportunities open us up to recognize that we need to bring ourselves back to God in one way or another,
Yes.
right? So I
And
love
I still want you to be intentional moms. Like I'm so like my next message when we talk is going to be all about being that intentional mom. But I also think you need to work on yourself. Like, what are you doing with your time when you're not mothering? Maybe it's a nap time if you have littles, or they're off at school or at night. You just go in front of the TV and kind of check out, or are you pouring into yourself? Are you reading the Bible? Are you reading other Christian books? Are you reading to like grow yourself? Because you have to work on yourself. You have to be intentional. No one's growing you unless you're working on it.
I love that. I love that. And so you've kind of given a few hints to the fact that we're going to have a part two, one that
I'm sorry if
focuses.
I wasn't
No,
supposed
no,
to share that.
this is great. Talking a little bit more about how this then translates to our parenting role, right? But thank you
Yes.
so much for being here today to talk about the aspect of us as women and still as moms, just not talking about the parenting role so much, but that'll be in our next conversation.
Yes.
And can you tell our moms, our listeners, where they can find you, how they can connect with you?
Yes. Okay. So I have a website, jodisnowdon.com, and I'm going to hold it up if you can see it, but it's Snowdon with an O. So it's JODISNOWDON. Everyone always wants to put an E there. Snowdon.com. And everything's there. You can find the book, Depth, and where it's sold. You can find my podcast. You can find my blog where Ida's been a guest writer and just all my things. I speak, all of that you can find there. I'm also on social media, and there's links to that as well. So I would probably say my website's the way to find me.
That's amazing. That's great. Thank you so much for being with us here today on Mom's Way to Wellness, Jodi. We appreciate your message, and I look forward to our listeners connecting with you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please subscribe and leave a review. This will help others find the show. If you would like to receive additional resources on motherhood and wellness, you can join my community by subscribing to my email list at idamaravillas.com. Remember, wellness is possible one step at a time.